to Rotunda in the West, Conversations with Australian Writers, although sometimes we have snuck in an American writer or two. And of course, you fill out those little forms, and on them you say, who would you like to have? And we've brought her by popular acclaim, Kerry Greenwood. So all coming for the first time tonight. Could you please welcome to the stage Michelle Fincke and Kerry Greenwood.
I need a round of applause. Thank you. Kerry Greenwood. Well, let me introduce Kerry Greenwood. She is prolific and dedicated, a writer who seems to cross genres and, from my reading anyway, seems to relish challenge. Her inspiration comes from the past and the future. Her work is full of detail and is beautifully crafted. There's a shining intelligence and, I think, a real curiosity that I responded to. She has degrees in English and law from Melbourne University and is a practising solicitor. Still the legal aid duty solicitor at Sunshine Magistrates Court. Kerry, is that right?
I've been practising so long, eventually I'll be good.
There are books. She's written books. Let me run through a few, shall I? The Delphic series, Cassandra, Electra, Medea. Oh, let's skip that bit then, eh? For those who don't have a fantastic view of that, that is quite a garment. I'm going to ask about that garment. 19 Phryne Fisher mysteries, 6 in the Corinna Chapman series, Stormbringer series and the predecessors for those books, The Broken Wheel, Cave Rats and Feral, short stories, plays, a swag of other novels that, if you want to be specific, I'm sure Kerry will show you her back later. Recipes for crime collection, non-fiction works on murder and on murder too. She's edited a crime anthology. There is a list of awards here that are pretty staggering, including the Ned Kelly Award for Crime Writing, Australian Book Council of Australia's Book of the Year Award. She's a crime fiction writer, and I suspect that many of you are here because of one character in particular, a sleuth who is whip smart, savvy, sassy, a seductress, a flyer of tiger moths, a fiend behind the wheel of a Hispano-dissuaser, a woman of impeccable taste, remarkable wardrobe, with a taste for interesting men, exotic cocktails, danger, too many gaspers, possibly for her own good, but I somehow think it wouldn't affect her in the end. Daring, charming, and with the, and I'm quoting a writer who just happens to be by my side, the sweetness of a chocolate-coated razor blade.
That's fine.
I speak, of course, of Phryne Fisher. Kerry Greenwood was born in Footscray, lives in Footscray, and is tonight joining us here in Footscray to talk about her life and work. Thank you, Kerry. I'd like to welcome Kerry. We might as well get it over with straight away.
All
the
right.
top, what's that?
This is a silk
magnificent.
coat made for me a very long time ago by my friend Sue Tonkin, and it has spaces on it for a large number of books, and every time I have a new book published, I write the name on it. So I'm hoping to live long enough to cover the whole thing. I wanted to have more books than I have years. I'm 58 years old, I have 61 published works. So I did it. On the other hand, I'll never live long enough to write all the books that I want to write, however long I live. So I just like writing books. You can guess, can't you? Yeah.
There is just a couple of clues along the way. If we can start our chat today with the fact that we have met, we were talking about this before, we've met in a non-professional sense, and I'll explain why. I have children at Footscray Primary School just down the road.
Yeah, yes. Geelong Road State School rules.
And when I was reading in one of the weekend papers a few years ago, and it was one of those stories about where people get their inspiration for writing or for being creative in the way that they do. And I recognised the school that my kids go to instantly from this beautiful photo. And in it, Kerry spoke quite eloquently about an experience in her early school life about a teacher. I'd like you to tell that story in a minute, but it had a real resonance for me because, you know, when we talk about our kids, which we do interminably, but one of the things that moves me greatly is the thought that when our kids are at school, that they may make the connection to the thing that their passion is one way of putting it, or their driving force. We put teachers have a lot of responsibility, and uncovering that is just another. But I wonder, I think that's what I found so moving about that story, Kerry. Would you share that?
Of course, yeah, that was, picture the scene. There I am at Geelong Road State School, which is now called
Footscray Primary School.
On Geelong Road, yeah. A very old bluestone type building. The very first time I'm starting school, I am 5.5 years old because I was born in June, and all I can see are knees. I'm about this big, small, frail, wearing an incredibly terrible dress because all I wore were hand-me-downs because my family was very poor. My dad was a wharfie. And so I'm standing there feeling very unfashionable and very scared because the place is full of people who are bigger than me and faster than I am. And a boy ran past me in that unflinching, terrible school playground, asphalt, and tore his knee as he fell over. There was blood. And I was hanging to my mother's hand. And then a lady going past bruised my nose, which was small, as was I, with her basket. And I wanted to go home really badly. And then, at the same level as me, unlike everything else in that crowd, the most beautiful pair of brown eyes. And there were no brown eyes in my family except my father. All the eyes I knew were pale. She had black hair, brown hair cut in a sort of basin cut. You know, when you plonk a basin on the child's head and cut around it. She was wearing a purple velveteen dress with orange skyrockets on it, even worse than mine. And she put out her hand and said, "Parakalo," which is Greek for please. I'd never heard another language in my life. And I put out my hand and I said, "Please." And she was my best friend. She is still my best friend. Her name was Themantula Georgi Vassilopoulos. She was in 3rd grade before she could spell it in English. But she was my best friend, which is why I speak primitive Greek, because she didn't speak English yet. She was clearly my best friend, but it was just unfortunate we couldn't communicate for a while. But small children absorb languages like arborea rice absorbs stock. You just, by absorption, it's just we're sponges. I inherited an incredibly good memory. Genetically, it's nothing I did. I just have it. So I learnt to speak Greek and she learnt to speak English, and we were terribly happy together till we got to 3rd grade, where they split us up. And so I wasn't with Femi anymore, so I was totally on my own. And they wouldn't believe I could read. And I learned to read when I was 3, sitting on my mother's lap. I had a book that I always loved. Katie the kitten, a small tiger cat, is asleep in a hall, on a ball, in a cat. I can still recite it. I can recite almost anything I've read. So I knew how to read because she turned the page every time she read it. Poor mother could read it, she recited too. So I knew what was on each page. So I learnt to read like that, by the absorption method. So by the time I got to 3rd grade and was given yet another copy of something called Holidays, which was just up from John Can Run, Betty Can Run, I was really getting to the state of complete despair. My best friend wasn't there anymore. She was being beaten in the next class for not understanding English, willfully not understanding English. And I was really feeling despairing. So there was this new teacher. And he was about 18 feet tall, mostly composed of leg. His name was Mr. Witherspoon. And I thought, so anyway, he was reading a newspaper, we were all doing stuff, holidays, and I went up to him and I sort of tugged his sleeve and said, "I can actually read." And instead of telling me to go away, gave me his newspaper and said, "Read." So I read a lot of his newspaper, and he took it away just after I got to the crime news, which looked quite interesting. And he gave me a key and said, there's the books. The books are all in that thing. You can have as many as you like, one at a time. You have to put one back before you can take one out. And it was the best present that anyone ever gave me. Because I had I had everything. I had The Wind in the Willows. I had Alice in Wonderland. I had all of the famous five, and The Secret Seven, and the five what do they call the five fine-outers. I had innumerable riches beyond any that anyone has ever given me a present like that again. I don't think anyone could give me a present like that again, because not only did he believe me, but he gave me the key to the book cabinet. And after that, there was no stopping me. I read everything, backs of cornflake packets, aspirin packets. I even knew what neuralgia meant because I had to read it on an aspirin packet. I read everything, but he believed that I could read, and it was wonderful. I've never forgotten it. And I was on the radio a few years ago, and someone said, what was the best present you ever got? And I said, I told the story, and he rang up, and he said he drove his car straight off the Southeastern Freeway, and he rang up the ABC, and so I got in contact with him again. So at least I got to tell him how much I really loved him. He was, by the time they were dedicating a building to my family at that school, he died, which was sad, but his wife was there and his son was there. And his son really looked like him. He was quite 18 feet tall, but I'm a bit taller than I used to be.
Yes, that's a story that means a lot to me, and I reckon probably...
Sometimes teachers are terribly, terribly important. And that was a terribly important thing. I could read whatever I liked at home, but at school I was sinking into despair. And if you think that a 7 or 8 year old child can't sink into despair, then you've forgotten being 7.